Tigil mo to! Jenny, please, buksan mo yung pinto! Jenny, please! Jenny! Buksan mo pinto! Jenny, tigil mo yan! Jenny! Jenny, tigil lang! Jenny! Jenny, sandali lang! Jenny! 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 Yung ATM ko! Nasa'yo kasi! Kukuha lang naman ako ng padala!
Kukuha ka ba ng padala? Dito may cash agad. Over there may video. May ATM pa. Drama-drama, akala mo artista?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business World one-on-one online interview series, which will give us insights from global experts and Philippine industry leaders that will help us navigate through the economic and business challenges of this pandemic. We are coming out with this series as part of Business World's 33rd anniversary multimedia report on the theme, The Road to Recovery. I am Willie Reyes, Editor-in-Chief of Business World. With us today is the captain of one of the country's biggest conglomerates, Manuel Pangilinan, who chairs infrastructure-focused Metro Pacific Investments Corporation and PLDT, where he is also president and CEO. He is also the managing director and CEO of Hong Kong-based First Pacific. Welcome to this series, Mr. Pangilinan.
Thank you, Willie, and thank you for having me with you today.
Yes, thank you. Let's go to the first question, an overview. Of late, the Philippines has figured as a country with one of the longest lockdowns, unexpected economic contraction, and yet the fastest increase in infections across Southeast Asia, especially as the economy reopened. What are your thoughts on this matter? What lessons has the MVP group drawn so far from a crisis like this one?
Well, obviously, this is a COVID-19 was totally unexpected, no. So in a way, we shouldn't be too critical about ourselves because no country, even China, was prepared to um, to deal with the crisis until it has happened. No? Now that we probably could look back a bit on what has happened so far, I would say, I think first preface it by saying that by and large, the government, the private sector, which have been helping the government, have done well, no, under the circumstances to respond to the pandemic. But there are a few areas that we really need to look at in terms of improvement, like our track and tracing method of COVID cases. And that 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 really relies on data, on the use of technology to be able to do that. And the best examples are Korea and Taiwan, no? Which, despite their maturity in dealing with this crisis, have been affected quite significantly as well. No? So it really has had a significant, ubiquitous impact on every aspect of our society, in education, of course, food production, supply chains, manufacturing, airlines, tourism, and so forth. So it's been a significant thing, no?
Well, if there is any silver lining in this situation, it is that this crisis seems to have pushed governments and the private sector to work more closely together.
Well,
Uh, to
yes,
respond.
you're right, and that's why I think if you have to use Ryan Kayab's new song, "We Heal as One." No? I think the early on we realized that our group has got to step up and help the government, its various agencies and addressing this crisis in its many forms. No? So, although the principal actor is still the government because they have the resources, particularly the financial resources to accommodate the needs, particularly of the daily wage earners and those who need the funding, like the MSMEs. They're in the best position, but the private sector should step up, as I said, to help in the other areas. No? So it's no, it proves one again that when you work together, when you work together as partners, as a team in addressing the needs of this country, then we do a better job by really realizing this is there's a significant common interest that underlies the overall effort. No?
Yeah, in some recent interviews, you have cited, I think, three or four areas that your group is particularly looking at. For instance, you said that PLDT is prepared to help in the implementation of the national ID system, particularly for use in, as you said, contact tracing and also digital payments for
Yes,
social
yes,
services.
yes.
You've also suggested that telcos register their subscribers to this system. How has the government responded to your overture so far?
Well, it has resonated in the statements of Secretary Carl Chua, the
Mhm.
NEDA chief, no? And he, I think in one or two of his public statements, he has himself advocated a national ID system. So, as you indicated, yes, for contact tracing, that would be extremely useful. And for the disbursement program of the government in relation to Filipinos who need financial help or ayuda, the national ID system would be extremely helpful in directing the money to the recipients themselves, no? Rather than through intermediaries like LGUs or other agencies, local agencies who could disperse the cash. No, so there are collateral benefits outside of COVID that the national ID system could bring. Right, for example, you could process your passports faster, your driver's license, your car registration uh, uh, plates, your POEA, and so forth, BIR clearance, tax payments, and so forth. So there are a wide range of benefits that a national ID system would bring. But of course, there's the innate fear of our people that is my privacy being invaded, and so that means that is where the Data Privacy Act has got to operate, and both the government and ourselves, particularly the telcos, have got to safeguard the privacy of people. No? So we believe that there, so but that's technology. It's not while it's agnostic, it brings tremendous benefits, but there are fears about that will arise from, in this particular case, privacy. And so we just have to enforce it because the privacy anyway is present already in technology, right? When you use your Facebook or even when you use your other apps, it's possible that when someone hacks the system, that they could have access to data.
Yeah, you've mentioned the clear opposition to this and hesitance to implement the law. It's been there for 2 years.
Yes.
Are there other concerns that you see need to be addressed first before this system is finally implemented?
Well, as I understand it, the privacy law makes it optional on the part of Filipinos to register and enroll effectively in the national ID system. Well, if it's optional, that's going to take a lot of time, right? And we in a COVID situation like this, you don't have the time. You need it right away. No? Um, so one suggestion I've raised with the government is that why don't you require the telcos? There's been talk about the telcos uh, being required to register their prepaid subs. I think together with Globe, we actually have more than 100 million prepaid subs based on, say, SIM count. But I think we have covered most of the population in this country. So if you require us, we will comply, and then there you have it. And then, of course, we have to uh, uh, provide the data, the database to the government, so they themselves and its various agencies could use it. No, but the concern about privacy, data privacy, will be there still. I'm not saying it's an all-in solution. No, it has that concern has got to be addressed. No?
Okay. PLDT has also been working with the government in addressing the needs of the education sector in terms of
Yeah.
connectivity, cybersecurity, e-learning platforms. Can you just give us an idea of how far this cooperation has gone?
Well, we have actually been in touch. Our people, the enterprise group, has been in touch with with DepEd, no, in relation to learning, to the learning process, to the education of our children. And DepEd has announced that the public schools will open on August 24th. And I think in certain cases, some of the private schools have started to open on a digital basis. No? So we have actually been talking to the private schools, and quite a number of them have effectively accepted our offer to provide connectivity, provide devices, to provide the data plans to their teachers and to their students. No? And the DepEd is very key to us in terms of helping the public school students, which are the majority of the 32 million students we have in this country. You know? So it's a bouquet of our proposal contains a bouquet of items for them, like for example the hosting the DepEd's learning management system on our data center, rather than them using, because most of these LMSs are based offshore in the US, for example. And if they do that, then it's more expensive because it's a long way off. And number two, there is likely to be latency when you're using the LMS offshore. No? So if you bring them here, then the distance is that much closer. It's cheaper as well. No? So that's one. Number two would be connectivities to the relevant public schools. Related to that are the devices that the students must uh, must must have, particularly the public schools, because we have to create an interactive ecosystem between the teachers and the students. It's not just one way. No. Number four are the data plans for the teachers and for the students, and number five would be for the remote areas, the most remote areas of the Philippines. We have suggested Signal TV because it is satellite driven, the delivery system based on satellite, and it covers every nook and cranny of the archipelago of this country. So theoretically, we can put the learning processes nationwide. No? So we have to work with the DepEd which areas they want to. We could beam the signal and install the television set and provide the devices to the students. So there's a feedback loop that is created, because broadcast is one way, as you know. You know, when you, whether it's audio or print, in your case, it is a one-way thing, no? So you need to create a feedback loop. For example, when the teachers are giving tests, they need to get the test papers from the students, no? Or it could be done digitally. So the students have got to be able to effectively talk to the teachers. No?
Yeah, you have said, Mr. Pangilinan, that some time ago that the challenge right now is to implement the new education setup as quickly as we can, not 100%, but for those students who will be able to go digital. Now, just recently, we saw government data showing that while majority of elementary and secondary schools have computers, only a third to a fourth have internet access. Also, just last Friday, NEDA gave a briefing showing that we fare poorly against five other major ASEAN economies in terms of broadband speed and price, and that most barangays outside the national capital and the main urban centers are not covered by telco. So the question is, how does one address the long-term risk of widening the socioeconomic divide as we push e-learning?
Well, in a way, the impact of COVID on education, on our educational system, demonstrates the greater need for connectivity, and the only solutions to build the facilities to connect. Now, because the wireless network is more extensive than the fiber, because the fiber is really more expensive. No, particularly in terms of the last mile. Um, so we if it's education that we're focusing on, we need to work with the government, with DepEd, to find out where the connectivities are. I think in most of the major areas, PLD's got the fiber, right? And in remote areas, it may not be economic for us to build the fiber. So we have to use other means, whether wireless or satellites, right, to accommodate the requirements of the students. We're assuring the government that we're with them in terms of that principle of no learner left behind, right? We don't want that. We ourselves should make an effort. I think if we have to build the connectivity, we will do that. Our capex now are at a very high levels. Uh, and I think we need to we have to approach this on a blended base, what they call the blended learning. I think you do have space in the schools, right? So maybe 50% or thereabouts of the students could go home, go to school, and it could be a rotational basis. There is some capacity, so we may have to approach it on a blended learning, because what we need to test eventually is whether the connectivity can accommodate the increased traffic when students go online in terms of their educational requirements. That has not been tested. So we want to do that actually. But we have to see the entire landscape first to be able to determine whether we have sufficient capacity. We think we do for now, no, in respect to the schools that have enrolled onto our system. No? I think DepEd, still has not decided, as far as I know, to which ones. No? I think there have been a few steps they've taken forward, and August 24th is fast approaching. Now, when you speak about just last point, Willie, in terms of speed, you see the numbers, and this was what I know we talked about it internally, and I've asked our people to actually reclassify the data, because the ratings agencies, UCLA, Open Signal, use the country figures, no? And there are quite a number of ISPs, internet service providers in this country, and there's one or two more telcos, no? So when it's all bunched together, I think we tend to, our average goes down, frankly. So if it's just the Philippines, let's say if Philippines were the only telco, if PLDT were the only telco in this country, I think our rank would be much higher.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I think Mon will probably issue a press statement in the next few days to say, if PLDT were the only telco, this is our speed statistics, no? In comparison, particularly with the ASEAN countries. No?
What timetable are we looking at to push blended learning or e-learning to the farthest corners of the country? Or I don't know if that's too simplistic. What could the picture look like beyond next year after the pandemic ends, for instance?
Well, realistically, really, if we keep to our schedule, to the government schedule, August 24th, and if most of the private schools open sometime in September, it's gonna be tough to accommodate. I'm just being realistic, to accommodate the 32 million students of this country, especially if the government sticks to the rule that no vaccines, no classes, no, then the only recourse of the schools would be to go digital. And so we need to understand that if that's the policy, then we need to prepare for that. No? So we would advocate for now at least a blended learning situation to allow students to go to classes, but maintaining the social distancing requirement. No?
Well, no vaccine, no face-to-face interaction in the classrooms. Do you think that's a good policy?
Not for me to comment, really, no. But just look at the consequences of that. That's all I'm saying. Then we have to switch to digital means to be able to continue the learning of our students. So there's a big question as to how many would not be accommodated by that principle. And there's an impact on the schools, right? If they don't generate the relevant tuition and revenues, then they have to continue paying for the teachers to keep them, right? So there's a very severe financial impact on schools, particularly the private schools. So maybe not the public schools because that's government supported. Certainly the private schools, yeah.
Yes, looks like a tough balancing act in that field.
So as I said, we would suggest blended learning, and so long as the schools maintain the strict discipline of distancing. And there's nothing like, as well, for me, maybe I'm just a legacy person. Still, there's nothing like, human interaction between student and teacher.
I just swear. Well, another one field that helps address the current healthcare challenges is telemedicine. Now, Metro Pacific's hospital group has said that it will push telemedicine, virtual consultations, e-pharmacy, mobile labs, and remote patient monitoring as part of its new normal services.
Yes.
What are the Metro Pacific's immediate to long-term goals in this push?
Well, it's to push that. I think a number of our hospitals already have telemedicine apps that they've adopted, no? And the parent itself, Metro Pacific Investments, uh, is now in the process of developing a full range of telemedicine platforms, no? Something that we would like eventually our hospitals group to adopt, so you have a fairly common platform, no? For me, what's important in terms of telemedicine is the the patient, or the person on the opposite end of the telemedicine platform must have a device that can provide the vital signs to the doctors you're consulting with. Because if it's all verbal, if you just ask what is your condition, and I don't know how you can. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know how you can diagnose properly somebody just by looking at him or her, or the person telling you what he's feeling, right? Whether he's got high blood pressure, whether he's got diabetes, etc., etc. I think there's got to be some device on his person that can give the vital signs to the doctor to see what could be wrong with the patient.
Yes, you did going a while back. You did mention the work on a common platform. When will this be operational, and what are the intended benefits of that?
Well, we had a long, long meeting last Friday about the Metro Pacific platform. So I would say we're probably 2 or 3 months away from it,
Oh,
because we have to enroll the doctors, of course, of the hospitals group in the first instance, and then make sure the app is properly designed. Then we have to make sure that the patient has got the device that can provide vital signs to the doctor concerned.
mm,
There will be issues about misdiagnosis, right? So there are quite a number of uh, items that still have to be threshed out. It's not a simple thing.
yeah, and I think one really major issue is security, as
Right.
vital information is transmitted. How do you address something like that?
Well, that was discussed also, the cybersecurity aspects, particularly in respect to the patient, doctor-patient relationship. That is sacred, no, in our hospitals. So we have to make sure that the data provided by the patient to his doctor is protected, no. So that's part of the overall ecosystem of the that we're developing for telemedicine. So
Yeah,
it's not a simple, uh, you know.
yeah. By the time these new initiatives are provided regularly, how big do you think will be the contribution of telemedicine to the group's bottom line?
Really, I don't know. I think it will be, if you are able to apply the platform beyond the current patients base of the hospitals, which is about, I think, 3 to 4 million patients we have each year. Then that is where the scale will bring you the benefit to telemedicine and the platform you develop. So hard to give you an idea, because also delivery of health insurance could be part of the package, you know. So, but what's the reason why we're pressing forward with it is the ability to deliver health services uh, coverage to most parts of the country, and to the lowest economic sector, no? So that's important to us, where you could deliver primary care. Our hospitals are mostly tertiary care, but
Yeah.
we need to address the primary care right there and there at the grassroots, no? So that's why it's important for us. Now, if you develop the scale, it's like a digital payment channel, then 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 it could become profitable.
Are there any other healthcare initiatives that you have been looking at?
Well, more the traditional ones, like we really need to build specialty hospitals, like children's hospital, cancer. The common ailments of Filipinos, no?
Mhm.
Cancer, I don't know, diabetes.
So more specialized facilities.
Yeah, I would like to see that because, like children, when I usually have a checkup here and in Stanford, and a number of years ago they opened their children's hospital. When I went there, you could see that everything's downsized to kids, no, including their needles. So it's and we have a large number of children in this country, and I don't think they're being treated the way they should be treated as children rather than as adults. No?
And these specialized facilities, do we see them being rolled out in the medium term?
Well, I think our hospitals are looking at it now, and I think they're considering certain properties where we think we should be able to build a children's hospital.
Well, you did touch on food. You did cite food production, and I understand that's another of the silver linings you're looking at. Can you just talk about the opportunities, particular opportunities that your group is considering in that area?
Yeah, it's been a long-standing concern. Actually, I've had no, and that's why we've taken steps to be in sugar. At one time, we were in coconut production, and it's I must say, agriculture is a business that the business sector that hasn't really embraced, no, because they can see it's very complicated and so forth and so on. And the agrarian reform doesn't help, to be honest. No? It's been around for more than 50 years, and I don't think it has produced the benefit that had been expected from that situation. So, yeah, food security is important for us because we've seen that. I mean, there was panic buying in certain, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, because there were concerns about food supply. Because that's really more important than connectivity, telco connectivity, even power, right?
Exactly.
You can survive with both of them, but not food and water. You need those. Those are very, very, very basic. So it's important that the Philippines become self-sufficient in food.
Uh-huh.
Because
Are
at
there
one time, the government was thinking of importing 300,000 tons of rice, no, more rice at that time. And of course, the rice suppliers were playing it coy. No? But you can't. I don't think we should allow that to happen. I think
Mhm.
we should be secure in the food that our people need. Right?
Well, for the longest time, agriculture, food production, agro services, they've been a laggard among sectors
Yes, yes.
in terms of productivity and contribution. And everyone seems to know what's a problem: lack of credit, access to credit, machinery, cold storage facilities. So, where do you think is the problem? Everyone knows what the problems are.
It is deep and it's wide. So, but I think we are going to take baby steps. We've already been looking at greenhouses because our shareholder First Pacific has started his greenhouse producing
Mm,
vegetables in Indonesia, and in the first, say his second Anthony's second step is to build a greenhouse to produce rice.
mhm,
I said that's interesting, but there's a greenhouse operation in Danghari,
mm,
and we've been in touch with the owner and operator, and we'd like to replicate that. We'd like to invest in his greenhouse. We'd like to operate a bigger greenhouse. We have a property of around 21 hectares in Cavite and
mhm.
another 27 in Bulacan. So we'd like to try that. That's owned by Metro Pacific. So we want to build a greenhouse. He's from Israel, and
Uh,
Israel has produced something out of desert, right?
mhm.
So when people say we cannot grow because we got our lands are marginal, what about the desert, right? These guys have done it. Of course, it's at a higher cost, but you're in control of the weather, right? Rather
Yeah,
than doing traditional farming. Albeit, one of our partners in logistics has got land in Mahayhay in Laguna, so we'd like to do the traditional farming as well in that area. If
yeah, I
I
do remember the Israelis offering some decades back to transform the Lahar lands in Central Luzon.
Yeah, we should get them here. We should get them here. So I'm scheduled to visit end of this week the greenhouse in Danghari and talk to the Israeli ambassador about what we can do together in agriculture.
Which particular unit or vehicle of Metro Pacific is involved in this venture?
Actually, no unit yet, so we may have to create one. Yes.
Okay.
In the food in Indonesia, it's big in food, right?
Yeah, that is.
Everywhere, sugar, vegetables, pig farming, chicken, whatever, and of course, noodles, etc., etc. So they're a model of a fully integrated food company from soil to foods.
Yes, Mr. Pangilinan, what do you think is needed for more businesses to invest in agriculture?
I don't know. Hopefully, if we're seen as making that investment, maybe we could get some other business groups to do things on their own. So set an example. And I think really one other important aspect of agri is it creates jobs. Right? It creates jobs. Like tourism, it's very labor intensive, and in the case of tourism, we're pretty good at it, aren't we? We are intrinsically entertainers, aren't we? All of us.
Well, I was watching, NHK, but it's Japan. I was watching a feature on the small farmers, and they're all highly mechanized. It's small scale, but I was thinking, when can we be like that? So I guess
we should, but we have a sugar operations in Negros and in Batangas. And what we're seeing is that the laborers that traditionally work, particularly the stacadas, they're diminishing in number because you're getting into the next generation of kids. And we're seeing that in the mining industry, in our mine in Felix. The kids are, whenever I go to the camp, for example, in Padcal in Baguio, and I talk to the teenagers, the sons of our miners, I said, where are you studying, di ba? Anong kinukuha mo? Ganyan. Are you going to follow the footsteps of your father? So, no, I want to be a nurse. I want to be like this. Nothing about mining. That's happening in agriculture as well. So we have no choice but to mechanize. I think it will improve the farming techniques, but there are other issues as well. So part of it is also capital. Now, with your national ID system, the banks and the lending institution, if they know who you are, and if you're a good farmer, then can I give an example? See Dave Almiroy, who's the founder and head of Multisys, lent his mother in Isabela province, in Kawayan ba yun? 5 million pesos, and she used it to lend to, she organized a cooperative for the farmers in her town to plant vegetables. And guess what? They've been successful. And so market is the other thing. And Dave spoke to several supermarkets in Manila. And SNR told Dave, we will get anything you produce. So there's a market. There's a market for that. So
yeah. Well, food security is certainly a priority, but what do you think about prospects for eventually increasing our food exports?
You have to reach that level. It's like Thailand, the best example of Thailand, that level of self-sufficiency, feed your people first, which is what Prime Minister Prem said in the 80s. Once you've done that, then you can create the surplus for exports.
Yes. It's like a natural progression from local security. Let's just have a few final questions. Some experts say it could take until the end of next year to ensure wide distribution of a vaccine for this virus. What could this mean for the economy and particularly for the MVP group? About 2 weeks ago, the governor of the central bank said he sees a sharp rebound 8% next year, but of course the multilateral agencies and credit raters see a more modest 6% plus. So what do you see happening next year up to 2022?
Well, it's probably what Governor Diokno indicated. So a great deal of it perhaps relies on the discovery of the vaccine, right? So if you have believed the news reports from CNN, which Trump says is not reliable, uh, they're looking at probably end of the year in terms of discovery of the vaccine. Hopefully so. Hopefully so for mankind in general. And the question is whether the vaccine at that time, by the end of the year, would be totally effective against COVID. So I don't know. But it certainly will help. And I think Governor Joker is right. We will see a significant economic recovery by the start of the year if indeed vaccine is found by the end of the year. And whilst I doubt whether there will be in that first round of the recipients of the vaccine, but hopefully on the second round we can get some of this vaccine for the Philippines, no? And put us back on the road to recovery. And I do hope Jokno is right, 8% or more, right?
Well, finally, Mr. Pangilinan, what are the questions of, what are the lessons, I'm sorry, for those trying to see their way through this crisis? How can a business prepare for a black swan event like this one? Like, how can an organization prepare for the unexpected? What are the lessons here?
I think it's really, the number one is, I think you have to look at how PLDT is uh, preparing for a crisis like this. No, we have a risk assessment unit, not very large, but their job is to continue looking at the risks of the business. And now, of course, that unit did not anticipate a COVID type, but now they're mindful of that. If there's crisis similar to what we're seeing, whether it's a virus thing or whatever, we have to be ready for that. So we have to address it in a somewhat generic fashion and organize a better crisis team to deal with the crisis as it arises. Um, but what's important, I believe, is you need to have leadership present on day one of the crisis and throughout as the crisis persists, like what's happening today. There's got to be leadership, and within the company itself, there's got to be a community that develops in helping the business and in helping address the health aspects of your employees and the communities you serve. No? So um, that's in terms of your own company. Now, what is the next big idea that could emerge from this crisis? Perhaps certain business most affected may not survive. Certain business like the very basic utilities, water, telco, power, will likely survive for a long time because and health, no, something people do need. So if you get into food, that's very basic. So in a way, when you go back to basics, that will protect you. Um, what is the next big idea that will emerge from the crisis? Is it food? Is it logistics? Is it what else? I don't know. So I think the guy with the next big idea will probably win.
It's the wisdom there is people say that some of the biggest and greatest inventions were hatched at the time of war or some other major calamity.
Right.
So do you think that that's what could happen in this particular crisis?
It could. It could. It's a challenge to the Filipinos, isn't it? It's a challenge to all of us, especially the business people. Oh, we have to, because anong
It's
gagawin mo ngayon, di ba?
That's right.
It's a challenge to us, and we continue to think about it. There are obvious ones, like as I said, in food, in health. Certainly, the telcos will lead the charge in terms of the digital acceleration of the habits of our people and the requirements of our people. We will lead the charge, and whether it's connectivity and solutions, they tie in together. You need three things: connectivity and access to as many parts of the Philippines, to as many people as possible. Number two is the content, be it the learning content, entertainment content, sports content. And number three are the platforms to enable the network, the connectivity, and the content to speak to each other, right? Which is what Multisys is doing, or they're helping us to do it. And solutions, which is what EPLDT is doing. So those three are the very basic building blocks of this digital acceleration. And we have to scale it up. And government is right. I mean, is there sufficient connectivity capacity to accommodate the internet requirements of everybody?
And on that note, we end this segment of the Business World One-on-One online interviews. Thank you, Mr. Pangilinan, for sharing this with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. for more insights from experts and industry leaders. Thank you very much for watching this interview.
Jenny, please, buksan mo yung pinto! Jenny, please! Jenny! Ano itong pinto? Jenny, tigil mo yan! Jenny! Jenny, tigil lang! Jenny! Jenny, sandali lang! Jenny! 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 Yung ATM ko! Nasa'yo kasi! Kukuha lang naman ako ng padala!
Kukuha ka ba ng padala? Dito, may cash agad. Over there, may video. May ATM pa. Drama-drama, akala mo artista?